1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Royal Blue Podcast Soundcheck. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Monday show live. Deadline day episode live. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Royal Blue Podcast Soundcheck. Hello everybody and welcome to this transfer deadline day edition of the Royal Blue Podcast. I'm your host Ian Croll. Alongside me is the Echo's Everton FC correspondent Joe Thomas. We are live in the Royal Blue studio and we are here to talk all things Everton. First off, Joe, how are things? All good? How was the journey back from the South Coast?
Yeah, not bad, Jay. Quite tired now. Obviously drove down to Brighton after the press conference, everything on Friday. And did the game and drove back up that night. So got in about 2:30, worked all day yesterday, and now it's transfer deadline day, isn't it? So all fun and games, but I think it's all a lot easier because of that last minute Beto goal. If it hadn't have been for that, then I think it would be a bit more of a struggle the last few days, but I had a bit of a feel-good factor. Obviously, some of you will have listened to me and Chris give our podcast on the road on the drive back. I was driving down the M23, then the M25 whilst we were recording, and having just come out of that David Moyes press conference, which I think has gone viral, it's fair to say, with him talking about getting booked for his celebration. So yeah, and the fact that it's been busy, expected it to be busy, and it has been busy, and we might still yet have a little bit of intrigue going into the final few hours. So all makes it a little bit more exciting, doesn't it?
Yeah, hopefully for this show. Hopefully we'll get some breaking news as we're live on this show. Obviously, if anything does happen while we're live and you're listening to this after the fact, there's literally nothing we can do. We've decided to record the live stream today at 5 p.m, as close as possible to the deadline. Joe's busy and I've got a few other things to do, so this was the only time that we could record. But Joe's already beat me to it there. Him and Chris did a carpool post-match podcast. So that was an audio-only show, so you can go and listen to that on Apple and Spotify if you haven't already. Today's agenda, we will touch on the Brighton game again, break down further Everton's draw, a last gasp equalizer from Beto, obviously saving the day. And it is, of course, deadline day and Everton are in the market looking to do some business, with the Blues reportedly close to finalising a deal with an option to buy for Chelsea winger Tyrique George. Joe, do you know what else Everton should be in the market for?
Go on.
A VPN. A VPN that gives them a secure internet connection. Any idea where anyone can get one of those?
Oh, I've got a good idea. Yeah,
got a good idea. They can get one from the show's official sponsor, NordVPN. So to get the best discounts off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/EFC. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on a 2-year plan, and there's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. And the link is in the podcast episode description box. Joe, I say you've already done a post-match show. People probably want to hear us talking about transfers, which is fair enough.
So,
but I think let's just touch on Brighton a little bit to start off with. Look, let's start with the positives with regards to that. It was a last-minute goal.
But basically, you've got something you want to get off your chest here, haven't you? That's where this is going.
Yeah, but
come on, tell
us. I haven't spoken about Brighton. No, listen. People can go back and listen to the post-match show which you did, but it is audio only, so I think the viewers who watch on YouTube,
go on, then.
Let's just touch on Brighton a little bit. Like say, whether you score a last-minute goal, equalizer or winner, it doesn't matter, does it? And like, the positive was never say die attitude. Wasn't it?
Yeah, that's a positive.
I'm coming out with the positive. Well, tell us about it.
Go on, what else? Any other positives for you? Is that it?
Me main man, Beto. He got his moments. He got his moments to shine. Is this going to kickstart his season?
It'd be nice if we could have both forwards going into form around the same time, wouldn't it? Actually have some genuine competition up front. It was around this time last year, wasn't it, that Beto kind of kicked into life just after Moyes' arrival. Once the playing field opened up for him because Chimiti, Calvert-Lewin, Breuer all ended up injured, and Moyes basically had no choice but to play Beto. That's when he went on that scoring run, wasn't it? Kind of late January, February, maybe just about into March. And I mean, in fairness, those were the goals that lifted Everton far and far away from the relegation battle, but he hasn't been able to rekindle that form since. But hopefully that'll spark something in him. Obviously, we have had a few false dawns in the past with Beto, and I wrote something yesterday, and I was a bit like, progress for Beto would probably be getting us to a point where each goal isn't as emotional as it is, because he's doing it so consistently that not everyone feels so special. You know, we had the big outpouring after he scored against Newcastle 2 seasons ago in the home game. Really good goal.
Fulham as well.
And then, that's what. Yeah, then 12. Then last season, you had him struggling at the start of the season, and he scores a stoppage time equaliser against Fulham, and he leaves the pitch in tears. But again, that doesn't really lead to anything. Not for a couple of months at least anyway. And then this season as well, obviously got the goal against Wolves that mattered earlier on the season. The one against Brentford was a good goal, a good header, but lost in what was a really wretched afternoon for Everton. Hopefully this a goal that genuinely means something, and it was a big moment for him and the away supporters, and obviously for David Moyes as well. Hopefully that kicks him into life again, and we have a little bit of competition up there.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, you've obviously preempted something that you think I want to get off my chest. I mean, I do and I don't, if I'm being honest. But if we're going to go straight into that, let's analyse David Moyes' team selection.
Right, okay.
Okay, so let me just bear with me while I read out my notes. So he started the game with 4 natural centre-backs across a flat-back 4. Obviously, one he was forced into because Mykolenko was injured, so Branthwaite is the natural replacement. Keane comes back in, and O'Brien is pushed out wide right in place of Nathan Patterson. First off, harsh on Patterson, do you think?
Yeah, harsh on Patterson. Patterson done well at in the last few games. Yeah, I agree with that.
Further up the field was probably more as you'd expect, but Harrison Armstrong played more. Well, he played out of position. Was he playing more on the right? Is that how you saw it?
Yeah, he played on the right. Yeah.
This is going to be maybe a really harsh question. What is it with Moyes and his persistence with square pegs and round holes?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that, especially so close to transfer deadline day, that was a selection that probably told us more about the players that weren't involved than the players that were. I think Nathan Patterson had played well in recent games, and moving him out of position for Jake O'Brien, who did a good job on Kaoru Mitoma last season away at Brighton. It was his second game at right back. Obviously, they kept a clean sheet and won that game, so that shouldn't be forgotten, because he did do well against the same person in the same venue 12 months earlier. But clearly, Nathan Patterson, I think, has every right to feel a bit aggrieved there. And also the fact that Moyes probably spent most of the weekend in the different press conferences talking about how he'd been looking for ages for a right back as well. So, hopefully we'll get onto the transfer window sooner rather than later. But I think that's one of the reasons why his future ended up in play today. Really, I think he can see that perhaps Moyes isn't as enamoured with him as he'd perhaps hope him to be, as he's trying to get into the World Cup squad. At left back, Jared Branthwaite. Look, I think Jared Branthwaite can do a job at left back. I was speaking to Michael Ball about this for his column, and which probably just gone up, and bring in Mykolenko getting injured obviously happened late on. So as late as Friday, I asked Moyes about the centre backs, and as late as Friday afternoon, they were still training with Mykolenko at left back. I'm assuming they were training with Jake O'Brien at right back, so obviously nothing happened for Patterson to be injured. So that still wouldn't necessarily be in the perfect scenario. I don't think that he went, I'm putting Branthwaite at left back, I may as well have all 4 centre backs on the pitch. But we've seen it in the past where he's almost had 3 very defensive centre backs, 3 very defensive defenders in a back 4, and it's given the 4th player, not previously say Leighton Baines, just the option to bomb forward and be really adventurous. And you kind of thought maybe you could use Patterson for that, so that Branthwaite tucks across every time that Patterson goes forward. But obviously he didn't want to, did he? So, but I thought it told us a lot about Nathan Patterson. It told us a lot about Adam Asnou, because we're not aware that he picked up any injury. I reported at the weekend that Moyes was open to allowing him to go on loan. Nothing has materialised yet, but I think that there was interest in him going into today, and I think everybody would be happy if he went and got minutes elsewhere. To him not even be in the squad when Mikalenko's out injured, and you've got Branthwaite making his first start of the season. He's only played 45 minutes, having had all those hamstring problems. I mean, that felt really telling as well. Like, if ever there was a sign that Asnu it was a player that he was happy to go out on loan, I think that was it. And then other players that we'll probably talk about is starting Harrison Armstrong on the right in midfield. Now look, the Tyler Diblin situation's been an intriguing one off and on this season, and I think he's been unfortunate not to get a little bit more get a few more minutes, but Dwight McNeil not there either, and he has liked to play Dwight McNeil. I can understand a little bit. I would have played Dibbling. I can understand a little bit if he goes. Brighton's a very difficult place to go to. Only Villa, I think, have won there since Everton did 12 months ago. Try and keep things tight. McNeil can help clog up the right-hand side. Obviously, didn't do that for the goal against Leeds, which might be why he didn't play at all. But for Armstrong to be starting ahead of McNeil, Dibbling, and Merlin Roll was all very, very interesting. I don't think that we can read everything into that selection yet, because I think that there are still so many of those players that are still trying to return to match fitness. Alcaraz and Robin both got onto the pitch, but I think they're still not quite there yet. And Dewsbury Hall and Branthwaite are still building up as well. Maybe a little bit easier to bring Branthwaite back in at left back as centre back. I'm not sure.
He loves a full back. He loves a centre back or full back, doesn't he?
And it's worked at various times, hasn't it? But it did surprise me. I walked down to the beach at Brighton on Saturday morning, did a little thing on my Instagram ahead of the game, and I said, I think Moyes does have it in his locker to play 4 centre backs across the back 4 now that Jared Branthwaite is back. But I said on the video, and I said it because I meant it, I didn't expect it to be at the weekend. I thought Nathan Patterson had done enough to kind of keep his spot. In
terms of the approach, Joe, I mean, Brighton obviously had the majority of the first half. I thought they were the better team, and then Everton did come back into it and look more of an attacking threat, and I thought Brighton did look vulnerable. We obviously leave a couple of gaps open when we're trying to score, and Brighton end up scoring. For me, like, Brighton's form of 1 win in 10, albeit they have only been beaten once at home all season, but confidence should be low there for a team who aren't playing well below us in the table. I feel like we maybe this nick and frustrate strategy, which maybe Moyes tried to deploy on Saturday, because we're the away team and it's kind of just a plan A, and I feel if that doesn't work, your plan A goes out the window. So what's your plan B? Obviously the plan B was throw Tyler Diblin on, throw Beto on, and it worked to an extent. Obviously we scored the goal, but I think the game should have been there to take to Brighton. If you look at some of Everton's previous away performances, I don't think they've just turned up at Villa. I don't think they've just turned up at even United to an extent. Obviously there was a caveat with the sending off. They've gone there to take the game to the opponents. They've gone there to play. They've gone there to be on the front foot, and I felt like they didn't do that against Brighton, and I felt I described it on Twitter as an opportunity missed. But when I meant opportunity missed, I just meant opportunity missed for 3 points. I felt we could have taken advantage of Brighton's uncertainty and lack of confidence, and I felt like we let them settle. And as I mentioned, we got ourselves back in the game. We had more possession. There was a couple of chances. I think Kiernan Dewsbury probably should have scored his chance. I don't know. Am I being harsh?
I mean, I think ultimately this is a manager that's delivered 10 away wins in 12 months, and some of them have been very impressive. And I think, for what you're saying, I think the vast majority of them have been built around going somewhere to where the priority has been to be hard to beat. And I think that's what's including against Villa, including against Bournemouth, including against Man United, and the others. The starting point for each of those games, I think, has largely been: don't let yourself get pulled apart in the opening minutes, get a foothold in the game, and then try to build on it. That's something that's worked well for Everton, and it's something that kind of almost worked at the weekend as well. They were lucky to get into the break 0-0, but after in the second half they were the better side, and they were unlucky to go 1-0 down. They did have some good chances. I do have some sympathy with your viewpoint, in the sense that I think the tone was perhaps a little bit wrong. Like you say, Brighton not in the best of form, opportunity to kind of maybe build on Everton's away form and kind of exploit perhaps some of their lack of confidence if they have any, just been beaten by Fulham in the last minute in the game before. I do think that in this game, what it did do was there were two problems. The first one is that it kind of set Everton up on, and I think this is the point you're trying to get to, it did kind of set Everton up on the back foot in the sense that rather than go out there and be aggressive and push and press on Brighton, instead it effectively allowed them to dictate play. It allowed them to come on to Everton. Yeah. Like the tactic was, again, not unlike some of Dyche's tactics where it was almost like fill the box with big lads or fill the middle of the pitch with players and big lads, let them have it out wide and we'll just deal with everything that comes into the box. And there are times when it works and can be an all right strategy. If it ultimately worked and they got a good point on Saturday, then some of that was from luck rather than judgment, because for all that they had big lads and good defenders in and around the box, Danny Welbeck had a good chance at 0-0. Karen Matoma should have scored at 0-0. You know, they were still getting chances from set pieces, even with all them big lads in. So I do see where you're coming from, and I do wonder if it set the wrong tone and made things harder for Everton rather than easier. The only thing that I probably would say to counter that is that, particularly with the players coming back from injuries and with the loss of Jack Grealish, I'm not entirely sure that Everton have the squad in the right place with the right personnel at the minute to be able to trust that you go on the front foot as somewhere as technically as proficient as Brighton. If you go to them and you try and outplay them, or you try and be a bit more adventurous, they are the type of team that can pick holes in you. And I think that Everton side is a type of team that can have holes picked in it, and probably I'm assuming that in the second half the approach that Everton had, they were far better. I'm sure you were far happier with that. And I think they were unlucky to go 1-0 down, but they went 1-0 down because they were being more adventurous, and that kind of exposed what happens. For all that you might get, Dewsbury Hall might score one of his two chances, you might go 1-0 up. There's also a chance that you then get exposed on the counter attack, and that's what happened. Yeah,
that's fair enough. I was just looking back at other away results where it's been a positive display. We've obviously come away with the results. We started on the front foot against Villa. I think we started on the front foot against Forest. I think we started on the front foot against United. And obviously then we scored the goal and down to 10 men and we have to sit back. So there's evidence there to suggest that. I'm not suggesting we should go gung-ho or all out to score. There's obviously you've got to stay compact, be defensively solid. And you are right, Grealish didn't play against Brighton when he did for Villa. So there is that, have we got the attacking quality to do that? I just felt we conceded to let Brighton just develop and settle into the game. And
I agree with that. And I wouldn't have played 4 centre-backs. And I'm a little bit perplexed as to how little time Asney's getting. Maybe not to start games, but certainly there's an option to come on. And I would have started Nathan Patterson. So I mean, I don't think we're in that far away from each other on this.
Okay. Very quickly, Moyes' celebration. I mean, the game's gone, surely, if you're getting booked for celebrating a goal.
It was amazing. Like where you are at Brighton, the press box, you're right behind the dugouts. It's one of the great places to report from, because you can properly see everything that's going on. You can't quite hear what everyone's saying, but you can really see it all. And when Beto put that in, the reaction was phenomenal. You're just there watching him dive into the crowd, and you just see Moyes just sprinting and skipping onto the pitch. It was brilliant. The press conference after was really fun as well, a light-hearted one, which I think a lot of his responses have gone viral after that, so everyone's probably seen the videos. But it did feel like a happy place. It was a point that felt like a victory, I think, in the end, given the manner in which it came, and I do think it was a good point. I think we can argue about how it was obtained, and I think that it probably maybe proves your point a little bit here, is how did the point come about, or how did the goal come about? It comes by having Nathan Patterson on the pitch, by getting the ball out wide, getting to players that can get forward and cross, and by putting those crosses in. And I know it was James Garner who put the cross in for the goal, but when Patterson came on, he did put a few balls into the box. It did cause a few problems, even though Brighton were protecting a lead by that point. So Everton, definitely they just, and this is, we'll come on to it, because we're running out of time for Everton to sign a right back during this window, and it's one of the reasons why I think that even if you're in a position where you don't, where Everton aren't 100% sure about Nathan Patterson at right back, you go and sign one. I think sign one now, like we've been saying for every window, because even if they're not sure about Patterson, just look how much better they look look how much more coherent they look certainly as an attacking side when he's on the pitch. And if they think that he's not someone that they necessarily want to persevere with, I think I've been banging this drum for a while. Like if you get a 6 or 7 out of 10 right back, you don't have to go out and sign a right back equivalent of a Luca Dean or a Leighton Baines. Just a run of the mill but natural right back probably improves that side quite significantly. And I've been saying this all month, but I really like the idea of getting a young right back in that you can kind of use as an option over the next few months. And if Europe doesn't kind of materialise, you can give them even more opportunities. And you go into the summer and next season with them firmly embedded into the team. It's another problem that's solved before next season, isn't it? Rather than having it hanging over us. But I'm not quite sure that's going to happen now. Just
final points on this, Joe. I mean, obviously frustrating, I guess, that we didn't win, but you can't win them all away from home. But the draw moved us up to 8th in the table for the brief period.
I'm not really sure how.
We did move down to 9th, but I guess we're still in the conversation for Europe and starting to quietly put together a run of unbeaten games.
I'm not sure how legitimate it is to be frustrated by not winning at Brighton. I know Everton have a good record there, but very, very few teams win at Brighton, and albeit they're not doing as well as they would hope to be doing, they're still a good side. And this is an Everton side that still has big weaknesses, and it's an Everton side where even some of its stronger players and positions at the moment are kind of undermined by players coming back to full fitness, haven't been out for a long time. So I think for that side to go there and get a good point at Brighton, I think that was a good result. I do.
I think it's a fair comment. I think the frustration from me, and whether this is many other fans as well, we've lost 1 in 7, and I think in some of those games we've drawn too many. That's the issue. I think we should have won more. I think that's my frustration.
Yeah, the danger is that you lose more if you're a bit more attacking, aren't we? I think it's clear to see how Moyes is more progressive than Sean Dyche, isn't he? But he's still someone that I think will probably set up in a lot of games to try and go, right, let's be hard to beat in this game and then build on that to try and win it, as opposed to, let's do what we can to win it and have the options on the bench to try and sort things out if we're behind. And I think he's probably justified in that in some respects, because Everton still struggle going forward, don't they? They certainly don't have the creativity and ruthlessness to outscore other teams, do they? When they, albeit they've come from behind in the last 2 games before this last week, the only game that they've got anything from after going behind was the Crystal Palace comeback win this season. So if you have a team that is so poor at coming from behind, then it probably makes sense to go into a game going, right, well, first things first, how do we not go behind?
No, it's a valid point. That's why we always say the cliche, but it is so true, that the first goal for Everton in the Everton game is so important.
It really is, isn't it?
Okay, let's move on to Everton transfer news on deadline day. So as we record live, Everton are reportedly finalising an initial loan deal to sign Chelsea winger Tyrique George, with an option to buy included. And the England under-21 attacker is said to be on Merseyside to complete a medical. So, Joe, obviously with Jack Grealish injured potentially for the entirety of the season now, Everton are looking to strengthen in the wing areas. I mean, there are plenty of other areas that we could strengthen, but this is what they've chosen to do, I guess, because it's a loan option and maybe not high risk. It's a trial for him, I guess. He's going to have some sort of a immediate impact to impress Moyes and the recruitment team to see if we take up that option for the summer. Yeah,
it's an interesting one, isn't it? He's a player. He has got 3 dozen appearances for Chelsea over the course of his time so far. 19-year-old, obviously a lot of talent there. England youth international, someone to be excited by, I think. And I think Everton have been clear throughout this window that they were unlikely to go out and spend big on a player, and I think that it's interesting because I do think, like I've written and said on here a few times, I do think there is a little bit of a disconnect between Moyes' ambitions and the owners' ambitions, whereas I think that the owners are quite happy to just keep their powder dry, or or be cautious and build slowly towards towards moving up the table, etc. I think Moyes very much sees Everton as having put themselves in a position where they could do better than expected, and almost take a few steps further forward than they were perhaps expecting to. Take a shortcut essentially into Europe, given how tight the league is in that middle position, and I think he's got some justification to that thought process. It does feel like there's uniquely an opportunity there. I think the top 6 now feel like they're settling into place. It looks like there'll be a battle for 4th spot, and between Man United, Chelsea, and Liverpool. But 7th normally gets you into Europe, and depending on how the cup competitions go, and that's sometimes 8th. And I do think that there's an opportunity. I do think there's an opportunity for 7th. So
there's definitely a gap starting to. I mean, Brentford might not agree with this, but there's definitely a gap from the top 6 teams.
So just
do you know what I mean?
Starting to feel like that, and I've not seen anything from this season so far to suggest that Everton couldn't be that 7th team. Spurs just seem to keep struggling, and now they're a bit behind. Everton have a head start on them, and Newcastle just can't quite seem to move.
Brentford are the most consistent team.
They are. So,
I know they've had a couple of bad results, but they're continuing to maintain their position.
Yeah. So bearing in mind they were unlikely to come out and spend big this window, Tyrique George is an interesting one because a lot of potential. I think the hand's been forced by the Grealish injury. Of course it has, and they probably knew that anybody with more experience and a more proven end product was going to be expensive. This fits into probably a longer term strategy that you can see with signings where they're signing younger players with a high ceiling. And when you look at this tomorrow, they will start the second half of the campaign with a group of players there, especially bearing in mind that George is likely to have an option to buy in it. If he does well, he becomes Everton's player. It's on their terms now. You look at that group of players, and Jake O'Brien is young, Jared Brantwaite is young, Pickford is still young for a goalkeeper. James Garner is young and looking really good. Diblin is only 19, has a lot of potential, even if we're not sure how he's being used this season. Asnu is 19, has a lot of potential, even if he's not getting minutes at the moment. Irobenham has a bit of potential. He's come on quite a lot this season already. Ndai isn't old. Harrison Armstrong is 19. Tieno Barry's 23 and really starting to settle in. You add Tyrique George in there, and you can kind of see that Everton are building a little bit of a. They've got the core there of a quite an exciting team and group of players if they can build around it and find the extra pieces to get that extra bit of quality. So it is quite exciting. George feels like a really sensible move, I think, but he also probably feels more of a. I wonder if he's more of a freaking group signing than a Moyes signing, the signing for the future, more of that Diblin ilk, because it has been interesting to see how Moyes I think is quite a pragmatic and quite a cautious manager. He's been very careful with his minutes for the likes of Diblin, hasn't he? And even Barry at the start. And obviously we've spoken about Asnu, and he's had this will he won't he with Armstrong all January so far, and obviously he's going to stay now. I'm really interested to see how he uses George. Really interested, because I think that a Moyes signing for me probably would have been Harry Wilson, who obviously is available, or appears to be available this window, with him being out of contract in the summer, and with. Fulham haven't signed Oscar Bob as well in this window. There has been some interest from Everton and Wilson this window, and that just strikes me as very, really experienced Premier League midfielder, proven end product, goals from midfield and on the left as well. I think if you'd have probably offered Moyes one of the two, probably would have gone Wilson. Yeah,
it's an interesting point, but I think that goes back to what I was trying to suggest, that he's going to. If the club are going to spend millions of pounds on him, he's going to have to play or have a substantial amount of minutes to make an impact. There's no point in coming and sitting on the bench. And I guess you wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't start a couple of games, but he is, if we're getting beat or it's a draw, he's given the opportunity to try and change the game. That's what I'm really interested
to see how they use him, because, Everton have got a trial. He is a bit of a free hit now, isn't he? So it's. But it's in Everton's interest to try and use him as much as possible to see whether or not he can develop into a player, isn't it? And obviously that means also they'll get an indication of that from the how they is around Finch Farm as well. But yeah, is he a signing for now, or is he a signing for the future with that loan? With the option. I'll be interested to see whether or not he goes straight into whether, because there are clearly the fact he was playing Harrison Armstrong on the right was a really interesting decision at Brighton the other day. He's clearly got concerns over his wide options now. Grealish is out. Does he have more confidence in, say, George than he does in Diblin? Are we going to see Ndiaye to the right, George come straight in on the left, or is this going to be a slow burner thing? And everything that's kind of where I'm trying to get to with this disconnect. Everything that we've seen from Moyes this season has been slow burner, hasn't it? With the younger players, Diblin's taken a while to get minutes, just started to get a few more, but even then he's not going, all out with him. Armstrong, first he sent him out on loan, he's brought him, but now he's bringing him in, now he is giving him minutes. Barry started better up front, gradually introduced him, but did show faith in him once he did it. I do think that Moyes is happy to play young players if he thinks he's getting something out of them, and I think Armstrong and Barry are the proof of that. And look, Diblin has been a bit underwhelming when he's been on the pitch. I think there are other reasons for that, including who was playing around him at various times, but yeah, I'm fascinated by the George one. But again, it feels like a free hit for Everton. It does feel like a sensible move, and it does feel like it has the potential to be an exciting one, because, as I say, if you can... And this is, again, going back to the whole thing I've been going on about all month, where Everton, or since that first week, that really bad first week with Wolves and Brentford not beating them, and then Sunderland, is what are you better off doing this second half of the season? Trying to play your best 11 every single game to try and get into Europe? Or do you actually look at from a squad development perspective and go, you know what, if we think we're just about going to miss out on Europe this season, then why not kind of do more around Roll and Armstrong and Barry and Diblin and now George and Asnu, and all of a sudden, you end up with this, you could, if it goes well and you're playing these players without pressure and it works, then you could go into the summer with a really, really exciting group of players that are used to playing with each other, used to playing for Everton, hopefully used to playing and not being afraid of the expectations of Hill Dickinson Stadium. And then you have that to build on next. I mean, that would be exciting, wouldn't it?
100%. I can't claim to know too much about Tyrique George, but I have done my research. I've noted some notes down. So, widely regarded as one of Chelsea's most exciting academy graduates. He's known for his ball striking ability, frequently cuts inside from the left to unleash powerful long-range efforts with his right foot. Said to be thriving on the left when he plays there, and his height and physical profile make him a unique, rangy winger who can drift centrally or operate as a secondary striker. He's said to be unusually tall for a winger. His frame... he's got a frame to shield the ball and win aerial duels better than a traditional winger. So maybe not the most traditional winger that we might be used to, but I guess only time will tell, and we'll see how much minutes he's given and how much he's used over the next couple of weeks. We'll finish off with this show, Joe, talking about potential outgoings.
Yep.
According to reports, Crystal Palace are willing to pay Everton close to 20 million for Dwight McNeil.
Yeah, I don't know if they're willing to pay 20 million
Everton
just
have
yet.
asked for it.
I think Everton have told them that's about where they'd be looking to get to if they want him. But yeah, so we kind of ended up with quite a number of situations in play going into today. Harrison Armstrong reported yesterday the decision that was made to keep him on at the club. There was interesting, Nathan Patterson to say he's had a difficult weekend, really, when you've had Moyes repeatedly saying about how he's looking for right backs, and then Patterson, despite playing well, getting dropped for Jake O'Brien, felt quite telling the other day. He's desperate to make the Scotland World Cup squad. So I think there has been interest both in the Premier League and from other places, including Genoa, in him. But I think even though he might not be the first choice right back, and he I'm interested to see what Moyes does at home, because I think it's a much different prospect playing that. I think you can maybe get away with playing those four centre-backs across the back four away from home. But at home, I think it's a different thing. So maybe there will be more minutes for Patterson than we're perhaps expecting. But what Patterson hasn't had is any reassurances over what he's going to get. So I think that there was a potential for him to go out out today if Everton could get another right back in. Doesn't look like it's going to happen. There has been interest in Brook Norton, Cuffy of Genoa, who, there was potential there for a bit of a merry-go-round, I think, where I think Genoa saw Patterson as an option if Brook Norton, Cuffy left. But it doesn't look like he's going to go to come into Everton. Timo Robenham, Lazio had a bid turned down from earlier in the window. There was interest going in today. Looks like he's most likely to stay now. Adam Asnou, not hearing anything about him today so far, but I'd be surprised if Everton turned down a sensible loan offer for him if one was to come in the closing stages of the window. And we are in the closing stages of the window now. I still would probably expect Reece Welch to go out on loan. They've been trying to find some for him all window, but like Eli Campbell, like he was needed around the first team for so much of it because of those injuries, so that hasn't helped. Eli Campbell went out to Port Vale along with Martin Sheriff, who's just come back to fitness yesterday. So that's that. So Patterson, I'm expecting to stay. Robenham, I'm expecting to stay. The big question, I think, right now is just Dwight McNeil. Palace going into today, reported last night and going into today that there was a potential that he could leave. I think if somebody was to come in from, kind of suspected it would probably be Sean Dyche looking to get a reunion at Nottingham Forest. That doesn't seem to have been the case so far, but out of nowhere, I think that both the Times and the BBC, I saw right this earlier, come from them. I've since stood up that Crystal Palace, they definitely have an interest in Dwight McNeil. So will that materialise? I have to wait and see. I think Everton have told them a price in the range of £20 million is what they'd be asking for. Palace are kind of just very, very busy today. They were trying to sell Mateta to AC Milan and bring in Strand Larsen from Wolves to replace him. Well, the Mateta to AC Milan deal has fallen through. So where that leaves them in terms of how much money's coming in and which deals they're now going to pursue, I think that's probably got them scratching their heads all the way through to the end. So, I mean, if we are going to have a late one, look, Tyrique George hasn't been announced yet. I've heard nothing to suggest that there's any problems with that. We are, an hour and 22 minutes away from the transfer deadline now. But I expect that to come through. Dwight McNeil may well end up being a deal sheet job, so obviously done by 9 o'clock if they go for it. I mean, I think that if Everton get offered sensible money for Dwight McNeil, I think on reflection, if we are in a position tomorrow where he's left, I think that gratitude is probably the wrong word, but he's had a serious positive impact in a couple of really difficult situations for Everton. Those relegation years under Sean Dyche. But he has struggled under David Moyes to kind of get into that team. And when he has been in the team, I don't think it's too controversial to say that he hasn't done a huge amount to say he should stay in that team or that Everton couldn't do better. I think it's been a difficult season for him. And the fact that he didn't even get onto the pitch the other day, having been withdrawn at half-time against Leeds, was quite telling. And if Palace were to go to that £20 million mark, that'd feel like a good deal for Dwight McNeil for me. I think we shake his hand, we say thank you very much for that hat-trick at Brighton, and it would have been his corners that Jared Branthwaite and Dominic Calvert-Lewin headed in against Liverpool in that Goodison derby, and a couple of other big goals and big assists in really important wins for the club. But we all shake hands and we go, that's a good deal for all parties, I think. I
think so. I think it's completely left field, that one. I didn't expect a Crystal Palace to be coming in for a Dwight McNeil. I mean, especially with their situation, I know they've lost a lot of players, but expected to lose their manager in the summer as well. So obviously they're going to have people behind Glasner who recruit players and stuff like that. But I'd bite the hands off. McNeil is if you're going to play a certain type of way and you're going to play him in on the left midfield in that, almost play him as a left midfielder rather than a left winger, can be very effective in the Premier League at that level. We've seen that, haven't we? Why Moyes has persisted with him on the right of midfield is something I can't quite understand. That's one of the things, though, Joe, and I know you and I are both in agreement on it. Like he's done okay in certain away games where he's managed to provide an assist for James Garner, and he was involved in the goal for the Tierney Barry. And people can argue, well, he played on the right there, but it's not his natural position. He's hamstrung.
Yeah, I can't even against Leeds. Not why McNeil's on the right and Ndiaye's on the. I just couldn't quite understand that, but yeah. And one thing just to finish off. Obviously, I mean, that Palace interest is genuine, whether they actually go to 20 million, we'll have to wait and see. It's going to be one of the reasons to kind of keep an eye on all the coverage. right now. But one thing I don't know is if they end up getting that, if Palace go to that price for McNeil, I don't know if that then means that Everton might just go for a last. Let's see what's out in the market and see if we can get anything late on. Because obviously they've made inquiries now. I've explored a lot of different players over the course of this window. So there will be lots of players where they know whether or not they're interested in coming with Everton, and they'll roughly know how much they'll need to spend to prize them away from the clubs because of all the talks that they've had with them. And I wouldn't be surprised if there are quite a few which they've walked away from, but if they'd have known that they were going to get £20 million from, for Dwight McNeil, a player on the periphery of the squad earlier, then they might well have been willing to do so. So I can't, for all I'm saying about not expected for there to be any more incomings beyond Tyrique George, they get a big sum of money in unexpectedly right at the end. I mean, who knows? Could be an exciting.
Yeah, 100%. I've got the greatest respect for Dwight McNeil, and I think he's obviously been one of Everton's best players over the years, and that is now not the case with some of the recruitment that we have brought in. And I mean this with the greatest of respect. I just think he's definitely been played out of position, so that hasn't helped. But he is almost a one-trick pony in a sense that he's got such a good shot on him. We call it a wand. He's just, you rely on him to kind of try and do that more too often, really. And if he doesn't do that, it's like, what else is he contributing?
It's remarkable how often he is able to pull that off. Bearing in mind, most people should know what he's going to try and do. But he has, he's played hundreds of games in the Premier League for two different sides, and he has had a genuine positive impact in some big games for Everton consistently. So with a degree of consistency under Sean Dyche, struggled under Lampard, struggled under Moyes, but under Dyche, he worked where he was. I think a fresh start for him would probably help him as well. Something's just not quite right there at the minute, is there? I don't think.
Okay, we will finish the live stream there. What I will say is me and Connor O'Neill are going to be back tomorrow for a Tuesday show. It is not we don't usually do a Tuesday show, but we are going to do one following on from anything that breaks this evening. So keep an eye out on the Liverpool Echo website for Joe's content with regards to McNeil and Patterson, and then if anything else does happen, me and Connor will be able to react to that tomorrow.
Yeah, just looking at something, swap Patterson for Norton Cuffy. I mean, that wasn't on the horizon when we came into the podcast. There's expectation that Patterson will stay and that they wouldn't go for Norton Cuffy. If that was down to finances, that might change if they're getting to a lot of money for McNeil, but it's getting late now. Wilson, I'm assuming that's Harry Wilson. I mean, Harry Wilson would strengthen that side, but
I'd take him.
Might be a tough one to get over the line. This late, I saw Ivan Toney there. Toney won't happen.
He's already put out a statement to say he's staying.
Oh, has he?
Yeah.
I hadn't seen that, but I mean that wasn't going to happen anyway. John Duran's not going to happen. Nothing like that. So yeah.
I think Toney was linked with Juventus. I think there was a possibility of that move happening. And he put out a statement out to say that he thinks his best chance of getting in the England squad is to stay in Saudi.
Right.
Okay, that is all for today's Royal Blue podcast on deadline day. Remember to give us a like and subscribe to the channel. And if you haven't already, drop us some 5-star reviews on Apple and Spotify. Joe, thanks very much. Everyone enjoy your night, and we will be back tomorrow roughly around 12 on the Royal Blue YouTube channel with a live show. I've been Ian Croll, and this has been the Royal Blue podcast.